Hey there, baseball fans. Yes, we are talking baseball today on the podcast. It's True North Sports Talk Podcast. As you can see, Peter Barclay here. And guess what? By the time this airs, pitchers and catchers will have reported to spring training. That's right, Tuesday, February 10th. So that's yesterday. Pitchers and catchers will have reported to spring training. In case you can't tell, in a long winter up here north of the border, this is absolutely my favorite time of the winter. Why? Because baseball's back. And what that means is that, guess what? Spring, summer, it's a comin'. That long wait, although it was a little bit shorter for Blue Jays fans this year, but that long wait from the World Series to the beginning of the season, well, it's coming to an end. The rest of the team reports on Friday, February 13th, although in recent years, there have been lots of guys who weren't pitchers and catchers who showed up early at the same time. So teams like the Braves, the Arizona Diamondbacks, Chicago White Sox, San Francisco Giants, Texas Rangers, they will be some of the first teams to have their pitchers and catchers take the field. And again, over the next few days after Tuesday, the rest of the league will be filing in, getting their guys ready, dusting the dust off, and it's just an exciting time of year for all baseball fans because no matter what team you're on, well, unless you're an Oakland A's fan or a team like that, maybe you don't have quite as much enthusiasm as the rest of us, but it's that time of year that anything is possible. We have 162 games left to play, and yeah, things might look one way on paper, but you still got to play the games because depending on injury, depending on anything else, other factors, you have all kind of stuff that could take place. So that famous saying, any given Sunday, any team has a chance to win. And so to me, guys, this is the best day in baseball after months of winter, and this winter has been a dogfight, to say the least, for most of North America. After all the trades, the signing, any of the drama that's gone on, guys maybe going here, going there, we finally get to see actual baseball again. You got bullpen sessions, batting practice, guys talking about how different they feel this year, talking about things they've been working on over the winter where we haven't been able to necessarily see it. And it's all happening or about to happen. Now, on a later episode, we maybe will do a full episode on this, but something new is coming to baseball this year that I am really excited about, and I hope you guys are too, and that is the automated strike zone. We're going to have a whole new element of intrigue to baseball this year. We've seen it in the minor leagues the past few years. We saw it in spring training last year. And this year we're going to find out who the pitchers and the hitters and even the catchers are who have the best eye for the strike zone actually at the plate this year. And lo and behold, there may be some surprise names on that list. And again, there may be some umpires we know for sure and some that we don't that are going to come under a lot of fire, especially early on in the season. for how they've been calling baseball for the last however many years, because especially the last 2 or 3 years, there's been a lot of scrutiny from fans about these umpires. So that's a episode for another day, but that's an exciting level of intrigue for one, in spring training, and two, heading into the regular season. So we are going to talk about everything you need to know for spring training. We're going to start going division by division, talking about storylines, like who's favored in each division, who might be on the bubble. We might have a surprise or two as to who might show up in a way that the Detroit Tigers did last year. And then we are going to talk about an interesting difference maker for one specific team, as we are going to talk about the Tampa Bay Rays at length, about moving back into, and their 10th man, Tropicana Field. After Hurricane Milton destroyed their roof, it has now been rebuilt and they are ready to go. So the only team this year not in a major league stadium is the Athletics. And that's an interesting story in and of itself. They are looking to build, or they are building, a stadium in Las Vegas. They're looking to move their team there for 2028 or 29. I forget the exact year. I believe it's 2028 though. And over the off season, they had some interesting news as they filed patents to be able to move the team and still call it the Las Vegas Athletics. Now, the patent office denied their request, saying it is too general of a name for the sports team and that other people may want to use that in a general way. Now, to me, that's absolutely crazy. The Athletics have been the Athletics for almost 100 years. Like, everywhere they've gone, in all its different iterations, it's been the Athletics. So why are we getting some pushback on that now? That makes no sense to me. The patent office needs to get its head out of its derriere, as it were, and just allow this to go through. Why? Because this is one of the older teams in baseball, and yeah, it's moved around a little bit. It wasn't always in Oakland, but it's always been the Athletics. And it would be so strange to rename the team. However, that could be something coming down the line, but they're the only team playing out of San Francisco in a minor league stadium this year. As we mentioned, Tampa Bay moving back to the Trop, but we'll get into that a little bit later on. We're going to talk about some remaining free agents. Some big names like Cody Bellinger and Framber Valdez over the last week or two have become signed. And so, with pitchers and catchers reporting this week, we'll talk about some names that you could see sign in the first few weeks of spring training. So, strap in, grab your coffee, your tea, cold beverage, whatever it is, and let's talk baseball, y'all. As you can tell, this is an exciting episode. So, the Beast. That's how we're going to start out today's episode. And if you don't know what the Beast is, we're going to educate you today. Because the Beast is the AL East. This division, to put it lightly, is stacked. The favorites, well, a team that's always the favorite, the New York Yankees. This year going into the season, much different than the last few years. The Toronto Blue Jays are a favorite this year, although they've always been like middle of the pack to upper pack in the East. They had a couple of down years where they were near the bottom, but then last year they just not came out of nowhere, but finally put it together. Any of the top 4 teams in this division, and those rotate regularly, could win this division. All of these teams have made some moves, if not a lot. And this division is going to be tooth and nail. Thank goodness for all of these teams that Major League Baseball went to a more balanced schedule so they don't beat each other up as much as it used to be when it had an unbalanced schedule and you might play 40 games against teams in the AL East in years past. That's not happening this year. I mean, we saw the Yankees in July, and then we didn't see them again till September. Same with Boston. So here's the thing, is that when you don't see teams as much, and maybe you catch them at a time in their schedule where they're on a downtime, things look and move a lot differently than they used to in every division, but especially in the Beast from the East. So let's start out with, for us here at True North Sports Talk Podcast, we are north of the border in Canada, and our team, the Blue Jays. So they're coming off Game 7, a loss to the Dodgers, and they were this close to winning all. A hair this way, a hair that way, and we're talking World Series champs here. They spent the entire off-season trying to make sure that that doesn't happen again. Now, I've been calling for this front office to be replaced for at least 3 years now, both on air as we are now and off air. I don't believe in this front office as much as they got to the 11th inning of Game 7 last year. And the reason for that is, this offseason, they allowed personal feelings to cause them to not even enter an offer to the best hitter in baseball when healthy. One of the stars on a bad knee of the World Series. And yes, we are talking Bo Bichette. They didn't even entertain the idea of bringing him back. I have it on good authority. They did not even try to bring him back. You have a fan base that was willing to feed him for life if you just got up off your butts and tried to re-sign him. This team made a boatload of money in that playoffs last year. We're talking they paid out Vladimir Guerrero Jr. contract and had hundreds of millions left over to sign Bo Bichette. And if they are perennially in that position they were last year, these contracts mean nothing because they will easily cover them. So yes, the Blue Jays are in an excellent position as of this recording. But I still am not sold on this front office. They could win a World Series ring and I wouldn't be sold on them. Simply because they are not willing to put aside personal feelings to do what's best for the team, even though they will never tell you that signing Bo Bichette was what was best for the team. They'll never tell you that because they want to save face. So, what did they do if they didn't sign Bo Bichette? Well, they got some heavy lifting done. They signed Dylan Cease to a 7-year, $210 million contract. That is the largest in franchise history. To a free agent. You got to remember, yes, Vladdy signed for more, but he was never a free agent. So that's the difference. They added Japanese star Kazuma Okamoto. 4 years, $68 million. They brought in reliever Tyler Rogers for $37 million. Starter Cody Ponce for $30 million. They made the odd small thing here and there. Chase Lee is another one. They've invited guys to spring training. They've allowed Chris Bassett, Max Scherzer, Ty France, Bo Bichette, all to leave. Seranthony Dominguez, all to leave in free agency. The $337 million they committed is the most of any team this offseason. There was even rumblings that they might go after Tarik Skubal, which would have been even crazier to see what happened. But the Blue Jays rotation is absolutely stacked heading into this season. You got Dylan Cease, as we mentioned, Kevin Gausman, Shane Bieber, Jose Barrios. Hopefully he has a bounce back season. You still have Ricky Tiedemann if necessary. You still have Bowden Francis if necessary. You have your potential fifth starter coming out of spring training in Trey Yesavage. That is a hard rotation to beat. That's top 5 in all of baseball. If they'd have kept a Max Scherzer or a Chris Bassett on the roster, it would be a top 3 rotation in all of baseball. Now, to me, I would keep one or both of those guys around for 2 reasons. First, what if Jose Barrios doesn't bounce back? Who do you plug in? Second, and you never know what Cody Ponce is going to be simply because he was in Korean baseball. Second, Trey Yesavage. We don't want to Alek Manoah Trey Yesavage. So to me, I would start him out in AAA as an insurance policy. I have nothing against Trey Yesavage. That is one amazing young man. And we all got to see it in the playoffs last year. But you don't want to Alek Manoah Dustin McGowan him. You could slow his roll just a smidge and make sure you have the next Roy Halladay here. Here's also the problem for the Blue Jays. They made no attempt at Bo Bichette whatsoever. They took a big swing at Kyle Tucker and whiffed like it was Juan Soto. Bichette signed 3 years, $126 with the Mets. We could have easily beat that. Tucker went to the Dodgers, which is exactly where you don't want him going, on 4 years, $240. And that's a big loss. So now their infield features Andreas Jimenez at short, On the field, that's amazing. In the batter's box, that is a massive drop off. I like Jimenez. He's a great guy. He just can't hit a beach ball most of the time. Ernie Clement, likely at second. After his year last year, if he can do that again, I'm real good with that. You got Davis Schneider can play second. That's serviceable. It would have been nice if they could have kept IKF from going to Boston, because he can play all three of those positions, meaning second, short, and third. And that would be a really useful guy to have around, because who else is going to do that for you other than Ernie Clement? And that's definitely not Bo Bichette. Then on the corners, you have Okamoto, who can play first and third. You got Vladimir Guerrero, who can play first and third if you need to. You got Addison Barger, who can play third at an extremely high level. So the Blue Jays are probably still right up there as the favorites, objectively even. They have the pitching. Vladdy's there. They're hungry not to experience what they did last year. So you can imagine they're going to come out with a chip on their shoulder and just try and steamroll this thing from an American League East perspective. The Yankees lose. As Vladdy so eloquently put it, they lost Juan Soto to the Mets last offseason. That really hurt their team, as they had been to the World Series the year before. They tried to retool by signing Max Fried to 8 years. They acquired Cody Bellinger in a trade. Bellinger did well last year, enough to garner a 5-year, 6-year contract in this offseason. And so they have him locked up long term. You got Garrett Cole, you got Fried, you got Carlos Rodon. They're pretty solid from a point of pitching, but those guys, a lot of them, are recovering from surgery. So they're going to have some holes to fill in their lineup. If the Yankees can get healthy, if Bellinger stays, which he did, and if Devin Williams can pitch like he did for the Brewers last year, they're going to have a good team again this year, but that's a lot of ifs. You got Giancarlo Stanton and Aaron Judge, who are each a year older. You got the unpredictability of Volpe at short, and you got the unpredictability of Jazz Chisholm at second. And unpredictability is not a good thing in those positions. They were able to re-sign Trent Grisham as well. And so I believe they re-signed Paul Goldschmidt as well, if I'm not mistaken. So they've done some pretty decent legwork there, and we will see. Now, we like to have a dark horse here and there. This next team is our potential surprise or our dark horse for this season. They finished last in the East last year, which is odd. They fired their manager partway through. But this Baltimore Orioles team has been extremely aggressive this offseason, and they had to be. They signed Pete Alonso to a 5-year, $155 million deal that smacks of Chris Davis, the biggest free agent signing in franchise history next to Chris Davis. They acquired Shane Baz from the Rays and Taylor Ward from the Angels. Those were some interesting moves. They avoided arbitration with Gunnar Henderson and Adley Rutschman. So those deals got done, and they kept their young core of Henderson, Rutschman, Jackson Holiday, Kobe Mayo. If these guys can take another step forward, Baltimore could be a surprise team this year. And in July and August, when it's steaming in Baltimore, nobody likes playing in that stadium as a visiting player. Now we have the Tampa Bay Rays. As we mentioned, and we'll get into more detail later, but the Rays are moving back into Tropicana Field after playing at the Yankees spring training field, Steinbrenner, due to the damage from Hurricane Milton. So we'll talk about more of them later. But the Rays, they're kind of rebuilding a little bit. They traded Shane Baz to Baltimore. And you never know what you're going to get from the Rays. They always seem to find good young players that they don't have to pay a lot of money to. And by the time they trade a Shane Baz, a Chris Archer, a David Price, if they trade players like that, you gotta, in the back of your mind, think, am I getting taken here? Because they don't usually trade players like that until just before they become broken toys. So, Tampa Bay's a bit of a wild card. And that stadium they play in, that at least the way I look at it, has been their secret weapon for the last 30 years. They got that back. I called it the 10th man earlier. And we'll get into it. So, while Tampa Bay's not expected to be that good, don't sleep on them either. Especially in that ballpark. The Red Sox didn't do a whole lot this offseason, but they're still in the mix. They were in the wild card last year. They played the Yankees. They signed Ranger Suarez for 5 years. They traded for Sonny Gray and Wilson Contreras. But they still seem to be a tier below where the Blue Jays and Yankees are, the way they were last year. And in each division, we're going to say a bubble team. So one that's kind of on the outside looking in, or a team that is right there about to be in. And we're going to say that it's the Baltimore Orioles. And if Henderson and the young core click, they might bump the Red Sox down even another tier in the East. So, the NL East, NL Central, the Braves, Phillies, Brewers, they all reloaded this offseason. So let's get to it. In the East, the Braves and Phillies, they've been the teams to beat for a few years now. I would throw the Mets into that mix now, just simply based on the offseason that the Mets had, even though they lost Edwin Diaz, their closer. They went out and got Marcus Semien. They went out and got Bo Bichette. They still have Juan Soto. Yeah, they lost Pete Alonso. But that's the thing. This team still, if they had a little bit more pitching, looks really good. So the Braves signed Robert Suarez for 3 years, Mike Yastrzemski for 2. They re-signed Ha-Sung Kim and have a stacked roster. The Braves, you gotta figure, are up there as the favorites. The Phillies re-signed Schwarber and JT Realmuto. They added Adolis Garcia from the Texas Rangers and are still in the hunt for another starter. They were very, very, very sad because they thought they were headed towards a deal with Bo Bichette. So they kind of missed out there. But the Phillies, they are always dangerous. The New York Mets made huge moves, signing Bo Bichette, Jorge Polanco, Luke Weaver. They did lose Pete Alonso and Edwin Diaz, but they retooled quickly. The Washington Nationals acquired Trae Young in a trade. No, that's wrong. I don't know. That doesn't make any sense. The Washington Nationals, they're kind of in disarray. They're like the Oaklands of the National League this year. You got the Brewers, who are the favorites, staying relatively quiet. They're a very well-run organization. They always compete. And you got to figure, if they play like they did last year, they'll be okay. The Chicago Cubs signed Alex Bregman. That was one of the big moves of the offseason. They're definitely trying to contend. And we'll see if that signing helps them at all. The St. Louis Cardinals, they're kind of rebuilding as well after a rough season last year. And the bubble team in the East and Central in the NL, I would say, is the New York Mets. They lost Alonso but added Bichette. So they actually got more hitting than they lost. They've retooled quite a bit. And if they get a better attitude from Juan Soto this year, they could really be a surprise. So the AL Central, AL West, and NL West, I mean, the Dodgers are in dynasty territory here. The Astros are reloading to try and make another run at the AL West. You got to figure Seattle is kind of treading water out there. Texas is on the fall. You got Oakland on the fall. The Los Angeles Angels seem to have lost that luster they had in the early 2000s. And so, yeah, let's see. The Cleveland Guardians are the favorite in the Central. You have to figure. The Detroit Tigers signed Kenley Jansen, but they're kind of a hit or miss team again this year. In the AL West, the Astros signed Tatsuya Imai, the biggest name out of Japan, and they are reloading after a down year last year. The Mariners re-signed Josh Naylor, who made a huge impact on that team last year, and you got to figure they'll be contenders again this year. In the NL West, the Dodgers, they're the two-time defending champions. And oh my goodness, they just got even better. They signed Kyle Tucker and Edwin Diaz. They still have Shohei Ohtani, Freddie Freeman, Mookie Betts. As we mentioned, now Kyle Tucker. They still got Teoscar Hernandez. They still have Will Smith. And on and on. So this is probably the most loaded lineup in all of baseball. In all honesty, they have well over $1 billion, yes, that's with a B, $1 billion in deferrals. I've said this before, potentially on previous podcasts, but with the CBA coming up in Major League Baseball, you have to imagine that teams like the A's, teams like Cleveland or Cincinnati will be pushing hard to get some sort of deferral cap in the next CBA. If you ask me, I don't know what the number is. Somewhere I would say, let's say 300 million. You put in verbiage that says a team may not, will not, cannot exceed 300 million in deferrals. If it was a salary cap league, which it's not technically, that would be salary cap circumvention. With the backloaded deals, or the front heavy deals, but long term, contracts that the NHL had at one point, people were circumventing the cap. They called them retirement deals. Well, we can't have that going on in Major League Baseball. The Dodgers, because of all of this, obviously are the favorites to three-peat. And other than the Blue Jays, I can't see anyone really stopping them. If you look at a team and the way it's built, I think the Blue Jays are the only team that really have a chance. What other team is there that's built like that? The Yankees don't have the pitching. They don't have the defense. They really don't if you look at that team objectively. I can't see the Red Sox doing it. Baltimore is still kind of iffy. Cleveland, they're good, but I don't think they're that good. Seattle, I can't say they're better than last year. So who's going to do it? Houston, maybe. But I don't think they're going to dethrone the Dodgers, but they might get to the series, depending on how things shake out. It's hard to imagine that LA is not getting a third championship. San Diego Padres have re-signed Michael King, and they're just treading water, trying to keep up. The Diamondbacks signed Merrill Kelly, but they are on the bubble, and that's our bubble team. If they can stay healthy, they could be a surprise entrant into the playoffs, and they could make some noise. We saw that a couple of years ago, the season before the Dodgers started winning championships. All right, so now we talk about the Tampa Bay Rays and Tropicana Field. On October 9th, 2024, Hurricane Milton made landfall in Florida. It was a Category 3 storm, and the winds were nothing short of devastating. Tropicana Field, which is the home of the Rays since the early 90s, was severely damaged, meaning the roof was torn to shreds. If you saw pictures or video footage right after the storm, it's amazing that they've been able to rebuild that stadium. 18 of the 24 fabric panels failed. That's over 80% of the roof. Once the roof was compromised, rain and wind caused a lot of damage inside the stadium. The Rays played their entire season last year, as we mentioned, at Steinbrenner Field in Tampa. That, as we mentioned, was the spring training home of the New York Yankees. And the Rays went 41-40 at Steinbrenner Field. Again, they only sold out 61 of their home games. But that's because it's such a small field. It just wasn't home. They didn't have the 10th man. Now, after over a year of repairs and rebuilding and rebirth for that stadium, the Rays are finally heading back to St. Petersburg. On November 13th of last year, the 2025, the Rays announced they will return to an updated Tropicana Field for the 2026 season. The home opener is scheduled for Monday, April 6th, and they'll be taking on the Chicago Cubs. So, what all happened here? Well, we'll start with the roof. St. Petersburg awarded almost $60 million as a budget for repairs. The final roof panel was installed back in November of 2025. That was actually ahead of schedule. The new roof features same or similar design as the original. They have those translucent Teflon coated fiberglass panels that are supported by 180 miles of cables. Makes you wonder, doesn't it? That they didn't learn anything. They had a chance to start from scratch, to rip the roof off of that place and build it with a retractable roof. That would have been amazing. They probably wouldn't have ever had to leave that stadium had they done it. But did they? Nope. We'll talk about potential reasoning why a bit later, but to me it still don't make sense. They got new turf as the playing surface was replaced. You can imagine, hopefully it's updated and easier on the body. They got new video boards. They got a bigger or expanded main video board, like the Jumbotron. They got new displays behind home plate, along with both foul poles. They got a new audio system. They refreshed and updated the suite interiors. And their lighting and electrical systems were upgraded throughout. St. Petersburg as a city under contract is required to keep the stadium playable through the 2028 season. The city is looking for reimbursements through FEMA and insurance, although federal funding is definitely not guaranteed. Here's the twist. The Rays have new ownership. Florida-based developer Patrick Zalupski purchased the team for what is reported to be almost $2 billion at 1.7. And from what we hear, they're already searching for a new ballpark that, if they break ground on it this year, could open in 2029 after Chop's contract runs out. So, sounds like either way, Tropicana Field's days are numbered as the home of the Rays. This is a short-term fix, but for now, the Rays are just happy to have their 10th man back and be back playing in their own stadium. Team CEO Ken Babby said in a statement, "We're excited to return home to Tropicana Field in April and to once again join our fans and neighboring businesses in downtown St. Petersburg and in celebrating the return of Rays baseball." Now, as much as I live in an opposing city, and as a team we hate playing in that dang Tropicana Field, I'm actually excited for the Rays that they get to play in a proper major league stadium. And to me, that's as much about fair play as it is anything else. The Rays, and we know what it feels like, because during COVID we had to play in Buffalo and Dunedin, and we played in 3 different stadiums in one season. So as a Blue Jays fan, we know what it's like to be displaced from our stadium. So to me, I want to see what the schedule looks like where they get to play in their actual home stadium. So the Rays announced that they have actually reduced ticket prices for 2/3 of the seats compared to 2024. $10 tickets will be offered for every home game. The Blue Jays do this with their standing room or their general seating, They have $20 tickets, and that's still not that bad. For most people, that's less than an hour's worth of work for one ticket. And so for the fans in Tampa Bay, that is a great deal. The team is also planning a July celebration to honor Evan Longoria once fans are back under the newly restored roof. So that's something exciting if you live in the Tampa Bay area to get behind. The Rays finished 77-85 last year. They missed the playoffs. They are rebuilding. But at least this year, they're going to be doing it at home. So, before we wrap up here, we are heading into spring training, but we have to mention some of the still remaining free agents heading into the season. As always, there will be signings during spring training. There are still some movements going on. So we're going to talk about that. As I said, pitchers and catchers reported yesterday, and there are still some very quality players that have yet to sign. The good news is for two of the biggest names in Cody Bellinger and Framber Valdez, they have both signed. Bellinger re-signed with the Yankees for $162 over 5 years, and it has opt-outs after 2 year 2 and 3. He gets a $20 million signing bonus and a full no trade. That's a 32.5 average annual value, and the Yankees, they're pretty happy to get him back. His 272 with 29 home runs last year was pretty solid in what they're hoping to get again this year. Framber Valdez, meanwhile, signed a few days ago, from what I hear, with the Detroit Tigers, and that's a headline from MLB.com. And so that's the thing. Over the course of the offseason, people talked about Baltimore, the Blue Jays, the Giants, but he has still now signed. So there's still some quality guys left on the open market though. As we mentioned, Max Scherzer, Chris Bassett, those are some real good arms that are still available. You have a lefty in Jose Quintana. He's a veteran innings eater. He was 10-10 with a 3.75 ERA for the Brewers last year. He's looking for a 1-year deal. Milwaukee wants him back, but he could sign for between $4 and $5 million for the year. Eric Fedde, he had a brutal first half with the Cardinals last year with a 7.88 ERA. He was able to salvage his season once he was traded to the Braves and the Brewers. He's 33, but he's looking for a deal to prove his worth going forward. You have Zach Gallen, the former All-Star, with a 4.83 ERA last year. He had a bit of a rough year for his standards. He showed flashes late in the season. He's 32 now, and he could get a 2-year, $30 million kind of show-me contract, as it were. You got Justin Verlander, who's still looking to pitch. He's 42 now. Obviously, from his early career, we'd say he's a surefire Hall of Famer. He pitched 152 innings last season, that's a 42-year-old, which is a dinosaur in baseball years. He had a 4.50 ERA, which isn't horrible. The start of his season was abysmal. If he'd have pitched the whole season like he did from August to October last year, if he'd have pitched the whole year that way, that ERA would be quite a bit lower. He has said he wants to pitch until he's 45. He's looking for 300 wins. He could return to Houston on a 1-year deal. But if another team really thinks he's worth something, they could swoop in and get him. as I mentioned, I remember seeing something somewhere that said the Yankees had swooped in and got Paul Goldschmidt. He's a 38-year-old first baseman, but he's not quite his MVP self. He hit .338 over the first couple months last year, but then everything spiraled. He's looking for a one-year deal, which I think he got from the Yankees, and we will see. Rhys Hawkins, the 33-year-old slugger, has been pretty brutal the last couple years. A .229 average, .698 OPS. He hit 30 homers in 2023, but someone could take a flyer on him for 8 to 10 mil. Ty France came off a gold glove last year between Seattle, or I believe it was Minnesota actually, and Toronto. He hit .261, 15 homers. He's looking for 6 to 8 million. Not bad. I could see the Blue Jays looking at bringing him back. I don't see why not. I mean, yeah, you got Okamoto, but having him around as insurance or a late inning bat off the bench, not a bad thing to have around. Kike Hernandez, the 34-year-old utility man, he's a fan favorite. No matter where he plays, he can play anywhere on the field. He's looking for 5 to 7 million. Free agent from the Dodgers. So if I'm the Blue Jays, I might go, come play here. Stick it to your old team. Kind of the way guys have gone there and come stuck it to us. Let's see how that turns out. So some relievers for the bullpen, because you can never have enough pitching. You got Danny Coulombe. He's a lefty reliever. He had a .217 ERA over 112 innings before being traded to Texas at the deadline. And he's looking for 5 million. So for a reliever, that's a pretty solid deal. Evan Phillips, a former Dodgers closer, he had Tommy John surgery in June. He won't be available until August at least. He could get a 1-year incentive-laden deal, but odds are not good. Michael Kopech, he was a flamethrower, but he threw just 14 innings last season due to knee and shoulder issues. But when healthy, he can be elite. A 103 opponent's batting average, someone will take a gamble on that as long as he's healthy. 3 to 4 million, in this day and age, that's pretty peanuts. So, why are these guys still unsigned? Well, teams are kind of being thrifty and a bit cheap this year. Unless you're the Blue Jays, in which case you've run through a lot of money and maybe just aren't looking at any of these guys. So the luxury tax penalties, they can be brutal for teams over the threshold. As I said, the Dodgers, in actuality, even though they're not paying it to Kyle Tucker, they're paying tax on it. So his average annual value was like 52 million or something. So that means they're paying $120 million per year in salary and taxes for Kyle Tucker. That is absurd. Period. There's nothing else to say after that. So teams are really hit by that threshold, so they're trying to stay under it. With spring training just started, teams know these players will get desperate, maybe take a little bit less. It's a buyer's market, and these players, they're kind of getting squeezed a little bit right now. Expect a flurry of signings as we get closer to the day. And teams are looking to fill out rosters. A lot of these guys will get invites to spring training. A lot of these guys may get waived partway through if they know they're not making the team. But you got to imagine guys like Quintana, Fedde, Verlander and Goldschmidt, you got to figure that they'll end up with a job. All right, y'all. Kind of had to run there a little bit. We are coming up on the hour here. Hopefully, y'all have stuck around to this point and are ready now for the fact that we are into spring training baseball. Pitchers and catchers reported yesterday. The Blue Jays up here north of the border, we are rocking as the AL East favorites. We did a whole boatload to make sure that we stayed that way. The Dodgers are going to chase their three-peat. That all began yesterday. The Rays are moving back into the Trop. So that's going to be real cool to see how that stadium has been rebuilt. Cody Bellinger stayed with the Yankees. Framber Valdez went to the Tigers. Spring training games start on February 20th. So we are, let me see here. A week and a half from the start of spring training games. So a week and 2 days. 9 days. Opening day for the season is March 27th. And for the start of spring training, though, we are ready. What do you guys think? Use hashtag True North Sports Talk and let us know who you think is going to win the World Series. Will the Dodgers three-peat? Will the Orioles be a surprise team in the East? Will Bellinger make a difference for the Yankees? Will Valdez make a difference for the Tigers? Do you guys have a surprise team that we maybe haven't thought of here at True North Sports Talk? Let us know, and we're getting excited. So hit me up. Again, True North Sports Talk Podcast hashtag. I thank you for tuning in today to True North Sports Talk. Enjoy spring training. We'll have tons more to talk about before we get to the regular season. And until next time, dust off that bat and that glove, because baseball is a-coming.